and give you guys everything you need to know about playing the champion. I made this guide knowing that it's not going to be the complete mastery over the champion. I'm not going to be able to find out every single detail, but I'm going to be able to guide you guys and give you guys the best idea of how to play the champion, the strengths and weaknesses, how to abuse the champion in the climb. As you can see, I actually went 1-5 or 1-6 on my first day, and you can see I went 5-1 the next day. So I ended up not understanding how the champion worked, and like many other people with a low win rate overall in the world, the champion is really easy to int on. But if you can understand how the kit works and abuse it with your rune and item optimization, as well as just knowing how your kit works, you will succeed on this champion. This champion is really strong, and since Riot nerfed and buffed based on global win rate, if she continues to have a low win rate, I'm sure by the time you see this, she's gonna get buffed. So that's even better because this champion is absolutely busted if you understand how to use its strengths and avoid its weaknesses. So let's talk about the strengths and weaknesses before you guys move on to the detailed content. So, strengths of Briar is her ability to skirmish early game and her ability to assassinate people. Now, yes, in the early game, she's literally a bruiser with her E, with damage reduction, and she's literally an assassin with W and Q. So, Briar is in a very unique position as a champion where I see her as a AD Elise-esque in a sense, because if you don't have a good early game, your mid game is going to suffer a lot. Because of the way your self-taunting works on your W, you tend to not be able to hit the targets you want when people start grouping. That's why, hence, I call her an assassin early game, because your ability to catch people out and win skirmishes is much greater than a 5v5 team fight. In the 5v5 team fight, that's where we're going to probably be talking about her weakness. She does not have strong team fighting at all. Her kit is not designed for team fighting except for her ult. Because of the way your W works, you always just hit the first target, and that is really detrimental to your gameplay. Imagine not being able to target the backline because there's someone in front of you, and it just re-aggroes to your tank, to the enemy tank, while while the AD carry hits you. So that's one of the big weaknesses. But your ult is going to be probably the main savior for this champion when it comes to mid game and team fighting. So that's going to be a general weakness. And the other weakness she's going to have is that she doesn't have any CC that is very effective, because her E is a long wind up that you can clearly see. So therefore, you're going to have to find ways to essentially, rather than try to kill the backline mid game, you're going to have to find ways to play around hitting the front line and doing more damage in the front line than they do to you. So you're going to essentially, that's why you build into a bruiser, is because you have to be able to beat the other bruiser. But one of the strengths of building into bruiser and beating the other bruiser is your build path. So right now the items in the meta are really good for rare with Stride and Black Cleaver. These synergize really well with her kit and make her extremely strong and really hard to lose to almost any bruiser, as long as your early game is decent. And last but not least, when we talk about strengths, we talk about how she has a 40% damage reduction on E and healing, and her W healing is insane as well. So the sustainability this champion has is almost like a mini Warwick in a sense, or a Nunu. With every time you just use your W, your bite on a camp or a champion, you're just gonna heal like crazy, and it has a insane execute. So high mobility, high sustain, high damage output, global ult. There's everything you need in a kit. The only issues is you gotta work around is not running under tower and making sure that your E is used well, and you just have to be very careful how you use your kit. But other than that, just everything is packed into this champion's kit. Let's talk about Blair's identity as a champion. And the thing I want to talk about with Blair is she has a very unique identity as a champion, because what you'll find when you start playing the champion is early game, you're like an assassin, and skirmishes favor you a lot. But then mid game, when it comes to your transition as a champion, your items aren't reflective of you being an assassin. You have Stridebreaker probably and Black Cleaver. And in those cases, the way you play is going to be different from the way you played early game. So the way I like to think of it is exactly how I said it. Early game, you're an assassin. And mid game, you're more of a bruiser. You're a disruptor. You don't necessarily just kill the backline because your kit doesn't allow it. On the current patch, unless they change it, you're locked into the first target that's in front of you when you use your W. So in that sense, you're not really able to be a true assassin, as well as your ult being really delayed with a 1 second cast time, and then when you finally do hit the target, the travel time and etc. The you just don't you just aren't able to one shot people late game without yourself getting one shot. Now, another aspect of Rare that I'd like to talk about is when it comes to mid game, you want to be looking to essentially be better than their frontline, because you don't have any pure CC besides a small stun and a knockback. You have to be able to out DPS their frontline. That's why when I talk to you about what builds are the best, the transition is always going to be that Black Cleaver, that Sterex, the Ninja Tabs, the Stridebreaker, to be able to out DPS the frontline, because you're not really going to be getting on the back line. And that also brings me to a previous point about early game assassin, right? Early game you're an assassin, but the thing about transitioning mid game to an assassin, if you do go full damage build, is your inability to target the back line. And what's going to happen is, unless they're split all the time, you're going to end up hitting the front line. So you better be sure you're able to kill the front line. And in those type of games, it can definitely work if people are split up. So I'm not saying that you always have to go bruiser, but majority cases in close games, you definitely want to go bruiser because of just the nature of people grouping in close games. Let's go over Bread's runes and summoner spell choice. So first, let's go over the summoner spell choice. So Briar is one of the champs where Ghost is actually going to be more effective due to one of her biggest weaknesses you'll see throughout the guide is her ability to gap close is not great. She does have gap close ability, but the more movement speed she can have over the opponent, the more DPS and usefulness she's going to have. So Ghost really helps with that in synergy with her W. Flash is always going to be useful, it's always going to be good, but I recommend Ghost. And as for runes, this is the standard setup. There's nothing really any different I would choose. It would just be Magic Footwear, Cosmic, Conqueror, Triumph, Legendary, Alacrity, and Coup de Grace. And for the adapters, I would go attack speed and health scaling because you don't actually take that much damage at all when you clear the jungle, as you'll see. So something that I forgot to add or to talk about is Conqueror and why it's better than PTA or Lethal Tempo, because some people might think on hit champ, PTA or Lethal Tempo might be better. But due to Briar's insane AD scaling on all of her abilities, you want to go Conqueror just to get as much bonus AD as you can, so that you can deal more damage and lifesteal more. So in this section of the video, I thought I'd give a quick explanation and uses of Blair's abilities and how essentially they interact with champions and minions. So first, you have your Q, which is going to be a leap and a stomp. This is the range. Essentially, you leap on them, and it costs 6% current health. All your abilities cost 6% current health. And it reduces armor, so the synergy with Black Cleaver, as you guys can already imagine. Your passive is a bleed, so it goes up in damage the more they bleed. So that's why this champ is probably going to be generally the builds, no matter what you build, they needs to be built around them being able to get hit for free constantly, because you want to get to your max stacks as soon as possible, similar to Idarius bleed stacks. Now your W is going to be your main ability that you're going to max, and it's Frenzy. So Riot doesn't actually show the range indicator for when people end when you're gonna like attach onto someone, but this is exactly what it does. So you see the bonus movements that you're getting, it's pretty insane. And then there's the part 2 of the ability, which is the bite. So you get a lot of movement speed, a lot of attack speed, and you get a team-out effect with your auto attacks. Now your recast is similar to just like a volley bear. W is almost the same thing. It heals for the amount of damage dealt, and it does missing percent damage. So this is going to be probably your bread and butter skill. And now your E is going to be a pushback or a stun. But the main uses of this skill is going to be dependent on if you're running away or you're trying to execute someone. So as you can see here, you gain 40% damage reduction and restore health over time. This is going to be based on how much health you have, so percent max health you heal. And not only that, you push them back or you stun them depending on if you hit them to a wall or not. And as you can see, the knockback damage is significant. 240% bonus AD if you knock them into a wall and you stun them. So this is more going to be your disengage tool, and this is going to be your only ability that cancels your W. Because of the way Blair's kit works, you self-taunt until the end of the 5 seconds. Even after you've killed one champion, if there's another champion alive, you'll keep chasing it unless you press E. So a good example is like this. If I kill this thing, that's a bad example because it didn't kill the scuttle. But essentially, if I kill the scuttle, it's going to target the next thing. If it's in range. So that wasn't in range there. But if it was in range, I would just go to the next range. And you could see how dangerous that could be if there was someone under tower and you tower dived them. And then you kept walking, and then there was a champion right behind the guy you tower dived. You would keep running on the tower, which is going to happen a lot. So using your E is going to be very crucial, or when to use it is going to be very crucial to your success on this champion. As well as hitting wallbangs, so if I hit my E and charge it up, it does a lot of damage. But if I just use my E to push them back and I miss the wall, it doesn't do as much damage and they get knocked back away. So if you're trying to kill them, you might actually save them here. Now let's talk about the ulti and its uses. So your ult actually is a long range. Well, it's pretty much global, but I wouldn't say it's completely global. It's long range. And the uses of this is essentially that you get the frenzy without using frenzy. But the thing about it is you get to use your frenzy again. So if I ult on the target, I'm berserk, I'm frenzied, I'm stuck to this guy, but I can use W again and then bite him. So I pretty much have two frenzies where I can jump to the target. I have two jumps, I have my W, and I have my Q. So there's pretty much no way this guy's getting away from me. And since target dummies don't die, I'm stuck this target forever until this guy dies, essentially. So that's gonna be, I guess, the downside you might see later with Blair. Let's run through Briar's abilities and why you max them. So, Briar has her W. This is going to be the most important ability to max due to its low cooldown. And essentially, when it says 12-second cooldown, it actually means 7 seconds because you should be frenzied for 5 seconds. So, once you get a bit of CDR and leveling, this is going to be really, really strong at level 9. You're going to have very low cooldown on your bite, so you're constantly going to be able to heal off camps or enemy champions. Now, the second spell you're going to max is your Q because of the armor damage reduction. And the other reason is your E is very hard to hit. So it looks really good to max E actually, because you get a lot of damage, potential damage, but the potential damage is really low to hit, unfortunately, with the knockback into the wall. People can see it coming from a mile away because it just takes 1.5 seconds to charge. Like, it's just way too long. And then lastly, you would just obviously max your ult whenever you can. Alright, now guys, let's talk about items. So I found two of the best solutions when it comes to first base buys. One, ideally you have 1100 gold, so you can buy hardbound axe, or you can buy pickaxe longsword. Now, these two options are going to be your best choices. I think buying an iron spike whip over a hardbound axe will never ever be the best choice because of the synergy you have with auto attacks and grinding movement speed. And as I've spoken about before, movement speed is basically the issue with this champion and the weakness of Briar. You want to be compensating as much as possible, getting all types of movement speed, which is why you would buy this item over Tiamat. Now, if you want more damage and you don't feel like you're gonna get kited in any scenario, you'll go pickaxe and longsword first buy. But in general, I would say hardbound axe is just too sweet. So in general, I'd say going hardbound axe, and then we'll go iron spike whip into stride breaker. Now for mythics, I will always suggest stride breaker or Triforce. Triforce, I'm not unsure, but Strikebreaker for sure synergizes too well with Brand for it not to be the main mythic for you to buy in 90% of games. Triforce is one of those items where I think it works on a lot of champs, but the question is whether the item is actually that good. So Triforce situationally you could probably buy it, but in majority of cases, you'll go Strikebreaker. Now, when we talk about mythics, we can't forget to talk about our lethality items, particularly Eclipse. I've tried other items, I don't think it's as good, but Eclipse is really, really good with Briar just because of the AD scalings. You've got 240% bonus, you've got 105% bonus, 80% bonus, 150% bonus AD, scaling, 110%. They're all insane numbers for any champion in League of Legends. Probably one of the best. So having more AD is just going to be really strong. But the problem with this build is when people start grouping and you start team fighting, you start feeling like really useless because one of the weaknesses of the champ is you lock onto a target and you can't unlock yourself unless you want to cancel your main ability. And then at that point, you won't be doing damage anyway. So this is going to be in the cases where you just want your noob stomping the game and you're just picking people apart. But once it gets to team fights, this will become really bad. Now, something I forgot to talk about, or I want to mention now, is Blade of the Ruined King Rush. Now, some people might think Blade of the Ruined King Rush is good, but unfortunately, it does not. The build path is not effective for Blair. Having more attack speed on this champ isn't that strong. I don't recommend rushing Blade as a first item. Second item, it's viable again if you're nude stomping. But I would say second item, the most synergy, the most bang for your buck is going to be Black Cleaver. So the reason why is because it synergizes with your Q. Your Q reduces armor. So that's going to be super effective overall when it comes to dealing damage over time and reducing their armor and essentially executing people. Now for third item, I'm going to recommend Sterix. And there's some people might ask why not GA? Well, the reason is Blair doesn't really synergize with Zhonya's at all. The champ is either gonna kill you or gonna die. It just lives and dies by the sword, essentially. You're going in, and if you don't kill the guy, you're gonna still frenzy, and you're gonna keep chasing the first target, and it's just not gonna look good. So Zhonya's isn't really effective. Because also after you Zhonya's, unfortunately, you keep frenzying, so you keep running at the target until you unfrenzy, so that also isn't effective. So for third item, Sterix is my best bet. And then if you're really fed, you can go Death Stance. And of course, there's Wits End too. And for boots, it's basically whatever you're versing. DDR boots have been interesting for me. I think in some cases when you're really fed, you can go CDR boots, but in general, it'll probably be Mercs or Ninja Taps. Your identity as a champ is more of a bruiser, so CDR boots is when you're just smurfing in the game. Now let's talk about Blair's combos. There's going to be actually a few combos you can do that's going to be very effective, but generally the main idea with Blair is being able to keep yourself in frenzy in auto attack range of your target. So one of the first combos you're going to do is a simple chase down with your W into auto, and then W at the end of your berserk because you want the execute damage. Now, the reason why you don't Q straight away is because generally your movement speed is not going to be faster than theirs, so you're not going to be able to chase them or hit them as much as you want. When they use their dash or something like that, and then you use their Q to leap onto them and then continue hitting them and then execute them with your W. Now, let's add a little layer to this. So let's use our W, and then Tiamat, or Stridebreaker in this case, and then QW. That's going to be your next combo. When you get Stridebreaker, it's going to be really, really effective for chase down and more auto attacks in your kit. Now let's look at how you would use your E. So there are going to be some cases where you're fighting in the jungle, and you can actually use your Q and E first. So let's say this guy's exiting the camp, you can actually Q and charge your E. So if I do that again, for some reason it didn't work. And knock them into the wall. That's going to give you max DPS, and then you would W to chase them down after. So another combo we're going to be talking about is now how we implement our ultimate. So just like I said in the ability explanation section, your ult is going to automatically activate your frenzy. So what you want to do is use your ult, auto Q, auto, and when they use their jump, you W again, and then bite them when you're ready to execute. That's going to be a key feature in your kit. When you ult, you have 2 extra dashes after leaping onto them, which is going to be super effective, along with Ghost. I forgot to mention. So your kit is built around chasing, and so should your items, because your passive and your W synergy is just too good not to try to maximize. Now let's talk about one last thing. Let's talk about how you would use your E. So you're going to be using your E in scenarios to cancel your frenzy when you want to stop chasing them. Now you have to be really careful when your E is off cooldown and you use your W. I cannot do anything to stop myself from self-taunting now. The only thing that stops me from self-taunting is E. So you have to be very careful of that. Even when I ult, I'm still berserk. Like, let's see, if I W and then ult, yeah, I'm still berserk. So the only thing that stops me is my E. If your E is off cooldown, you are running on the tower. If the enemy target is on the tower, unfortunately that's how it is. And one last thing we can talk about is how you would use your E in combat. So if I use my normal combo, I bite the guy but I don't execute him, you can push them really far away and just walk away. Generally, you want to just be using your E as a disengage tool or a cancelling of your W, or full damage for the wallbang. Those are going to be your 3 uses. Alright, let's go through Briar's matchups, and just like in other guides, you can see Briar has a tendency to have strengths against a certain style of champion and weaknesses against a certain style. So we'll go bottom to top. So we have Lilia at the bottom, and Lilia is going to be one of the hardest champions to verse because of her ability to kite. One of Briar's biggest weaknesses is when the opponent is more mobile than you, meaning having more movement speed or having multiple dashes. And now, just like Lilia has more movement speed than Briar, nearly has more jump. And the reason why this is going to be a big weakness, and generally you don't want to verse champions like this, for example Vayne as well, is because if the enemy is untargetable, your W will just stop working. It won't, or you'll change different targets and then you'll end up hitting the tank while the AD carry just hits you or the jungler just hits you. So this is a really big weakness that can be exploited by these type of junglers once people start to get to know the weakness of a kit. Now I put Elise here, even though she's not mobile, she has the exact perfect ability to just disrupt Briar's combo, which is her repel. Once she repels, Briar can no longer frenzy, and she's just standing still, or she targets the next thing, which is just not good anyway. You can't. It's very difficult to retarget on this champion if the enemy team knows what they're doing. So these three champions are probably going to be your hardest, and as you see, when you scale up, Lee Sin also can kite you, even though he's a melee champion, has 2 dashes. But as we go up the list, the mobility becomes less, and their level of commitment becomes more. So we have Ivan, Kindred, Echo, Sejuani, Evelyn, Kha'Zix. These all have mobility, don't get me wrong, all disruptors, but they aren't as punishing if you don't chase them down, because some of these champs require damage to do damage in your range as well. Whereas the champions on the bottom that are hard to verse aren't as they are more punishing if you walk into their range without doing damage to them. And so if we move up the list, it gets better and better. All these champions you're looking at, Nocturne, Malphite, I don't know why Malphite's special guest here in the tier list, Diego, Gwen, Jarvan, Belveth, Kayn, all these champions you can outfight and out DPS. This is where your champion's going to shine. And as you can see at the top, these are probably the most committal champions in the game. Rek'Sai, Vi, Olaf, Diana, Hecarim, and Graves, where if they want to fight you, they have to use their mobility spell, and if they're running away, you can still chase them and beat them down. And they're usually forced to fight you back. So the Z tier up here is generally the type of champions you want to verse. Even if we're not talking about jungle champions, the general archetype of the champs you want to verse are bruisers, immobile bruisers. So it's generally going to be top laners that you're going to be beating up in the mid game. And also people that don't have dashes. Alright, let's run through a Blair clear. The best clear is usually going to be on red side. I'm going to start W. And I'm going to let it go berserk. And use my W at the last second. Now I'm going to use my W again. This time I'm going to use my second bite straight away. And now I'm going to E at the max range. Push it against the wall. Get that extra damage. Hide it. Again, I'm going to try to get to that execute range around that 200 mark. At the mini golems. You can see how healthy the clear is. And once you've gotten to this stage where you've done 3 camps, you have choices for invade, gank, or let's continue on our full clear. And you can see the 3 camps really fast. It was like 227. Another tip is you could just use your W before you even reach the camp, just for extra movement speed. Bite, auto E. And as you can see, I put 2 points in Q as well. That's also another great tip to increase your clear speed. And again, I use my W over the wall just to maximize time. And I'm able to E again. Can smite this and then W onto the next camp. And so your clear is almost to the point where you don't need to buy a pot. That's how healthy it is. And bam, you've got the full clear right there on the red side. And for the blue side, it would be the exact same, where you start W, then you go E, and then you go 2 points W if you're gonna full clear. If you're not gonna full clear, then you just put 1 point in Q, and you'll just have 3 points in each ability. Or 1 point in each ability, sorry. Now let's talk about Briar's mobility on her W and how you can maximize it. So I'm going to show you a few examples. You could imagine going behind someone right there, charging your E if they have no flash, and knocking them back in your team. That'll be one really great example of how to use your mobility. Or you can jump the wall here. You can also jump this thick wall. If I do it properly, there you go. If I go back, yeah, it's around about here, which is really, really useful for escaping maybe after counter jungling, they're chasing you down. And of course, you can do this wall as well. And you can jump this wall. This one is super effective for clearing camps or getting in and out. The raptor wall as well is going to be really, really useful. And you can imagine as well, you can also W past this wall, which is really, really useful for chasing someone down. And so essentially you can see the trend of, and you can start getting creative as well. Like I said before, you can jump behind and gank. Or again, you can jump thick, really thick walls. Like here, and get behind people. Obviously, you have to be cautious how you use your W because it is your main ability. So if you can't kill them without your W, then you probably shouldn't be trying to force ganks when you're behind them like that. But in general, just know that your range is really insane. Like, this is so fun to do this. But if you look at the range indicator, doesn't look like you can jump that far. So remember to utilize your ability to jump over thick walls as much as you can when you play this champion, or when you're just trying to clear faster or get to places faster. On top of that, we're going to talk about now her ability to combo in the jungle. So similar to Graves' Q on release, you really want to hit that knock into the wall. And same with Briar. And one of the ways you're going to do that is using your Q and E. Now, the reason why I don't say this in open area is because your Q is not long enough stun for the E to work. So this is only going to work against immobile champs or when you're in tight corridors like this. When I charge my E, there's no other choice for the champion but to get hit into the wall because the choke point like this is just too small for you to move anywhere. So Briar's gonna really thrive in these jungle fights where it's close quarters and the only way for them to dodge it is to literally flash out of range because of just the range you cover with your E. So keep that in mind. Open area versus closed area when using Briar E is going to be an important concept for you to understand. Always looking for that closed area to look for this QE combo right here. I wanted to show an example of the concept of engage and re-engage on Blair, and this is going to be very prevalent in grouping and teamfight scenarios. So if we go back here, you can see we start the dragon, and they're looking to contest over the wall, end up healing the full HP, and using my E to disengage and survive the initial burst. Once they've used all their spells, since they tried to burst me, I used my ult to re-engage into 3 and fear all of them. So this is going to be a classic way that you play team fights in general, ideally, if you're going to front to back team fight as Blair, is using your initial abilities to force them to confront you and waste their abilities, and you timing your E with their CC or burst damage, and then re-engaging when your W bite is back up again to heal and re-engage, as well as use your fear on multiple targets. Now let's look at some common ways we can hit our ult without having to do some mathematical equation to effectively, consistently hit our ults. So one of the first ways I'll always recommend hitting your ult is going through lane and using minions, camps, towers, but in this case just minion, or predict where the Kai'Sa or your desired target is going to move. So in this scenario, I was able to chunk the Kai'Sa and effectively use Herald because of the chunk, and a skirmish was able to happen. I was able to clean up full plates and a double kill, which was in a flash. So let's move on to our next ultimate. Another example is going to be when they hit tower without realizing that I have ults. So I'm gonna always ult at the same time they're about to hit the tower. In this case, I was a bit late, but you guys understand the concept. And we're able to chase. Oh, I'm not able to kill him. I think I misplayed there, but I should have been able to kill him. Able to queue out and leave. So let's look at our next ultimate here. These are going to be the more tricky ultimates that don't hit. Yeah, clearly didn't hit it. Because there's no reason for an opponent to stand in a specific position. We look at our next ultimate. These are going to be the ones where you know which path they're running to. So this isn't going to be based on them walking towards a specific objective to hit. This is that you predicting where they're going to run based on the path they're moving from. Alright, let's look at another example. These guns are going to be much harder to hit, yeah. I don't recommend going for these ones too often. Like, when they're fighting, only when they're going to go into a certain choke, which this Jace wasn't, or they're going to leave into a certain choke. So here I actually should have altered the Raptor Bush if I wanted to keep going. Instead of ult towards this open area. Well, I did try to ult the choke, but in this case, I was overly predicting that my ult was going to land in time when I should have recognized my ult is very slow cast time and slow projectile, so I should have went for the Raptor Bush instead. Last ult here was perfect ult. Hit them in the back of pit, stuck in the back of pit. And we have that. So to summarize, it's going to be towers, minions, or champions that they're going to want to hit. That's the best time where you want to use your ult. And you want to line yourself up vertically if you can. And if you can't, then you want to look for escape points and choke points to ult so that your percentage of hitting your ult is going to be much higher. Okay, so let's talk through early game options on Briar, and one of the best options you have is through camping on Briar and forcing a skirmish. So in this game, this particular environment, it suits best for this type of aggressive forcing of the skirmish when you have very aggressive lanes that are forced to fight each other to push the wave. So you have Singe vs GP, the way they interact, the relationship between each other. They have to fight for the wave, and same with Pantheon, Fizz, and same with Draven because their bot lane is a poke and our bot lane is an all-in lane. So I recognize in this scenario that I can actually all-in 2v2 mid and we will win. And I see Pantheon trying to poke Fizz on tower, so I decided to use the mobility people don't understand yet, which is my ability to chase people down. And I Ghost W, I block all the CC with my E, continue to hit them, and we end up getting the free double kill. And as you can see, I implement the same concept in about a minute. So we're going to keep farming here. Pantheon's respawning, Jarvan's respawning. I need to kind of get out of here as soon as possible. I decide to cross map into river. Pantheon's trying some weird freeze, so I actually decide to mess with him. I wisely choose not to run down on the tower. I keep moving bot side to check for maybe a potential fight, because Jarvan was level 2. I realize, okay, he's at his red buff. So I decide to stay on the map. Briar's clear and sustain's really good, so this is sort of an abuse of that strength as a champion. And once again, we're going to farm while he's ganking, and when the time is right here, I'm going to also look again mid for another skirmish, because I know Jarvan also can be here. I'm very confident in our ability to fight, so it's going to be the same scenario again, where I'm running him down. Unfortunately, Pantheon stuns me, so as you can see, there's one of the weaknesses of Briar is when you can't auto attack people, you're just chasing them. So you need to actually have to gap close and auto attack them to do DPS. But you can see the lane's frozen, so I'm still gonna look here even though I haven't based yet, because my base damage is so high. And our support is here as well. So this is going to be a great example of your first clear. Now let's look at our second clear here. Jarvan ganks top. If I fast forward, I move into the river because Fizz is about to hit 6, so something's going to go down mid again. And you can see I ghost NW on this guy, and he is dead again. Now let's see what I do now. I do Raptors Goms while my team is resetting. Not much to do here. And then I look for a fight again, because this guy is not allowed to hit river. Notice how I save my... We go back, notice how I save my Q, because I don't want to use it when I can already hit him for free with my auto attacks. I only want to use it when he's CC'd, so unfortunately he gets out, but he's half HP, and the last thing I want to showcase here on this VOD is how easy I take Dragon. This is my second base. I'm level 5 with Rebuff. Rebuff definitely helps, but look how fast I take Dragon and how much sustain I've got. I've literally soloed the Dragon. So this is going to be one of your options, the way you want to play. If you want to play this way in these type of games, it's going to be a very effective early game for you. Alright, now let's look through another option you have to play really aggressive on Blair. And it's going to be the same path as our previous option here, where we're going to 3 camp with red buff start with the same clear, using your E, charging it, knocking with the wall, the goms in the wall, Wing, and executing with W when the gom gets low. And as you can see, it's actually identical, almost identical as the last game, where the jungle is starting the other opposite red. But in this game, the lanes are not as aggro. We have Akali, who's definitely not going to fight early game, and we have Jax and Yone, who is sort of volatile, but not as much as last game, and same with the bot lane. So in this game, unfortunately, my bot lane gets dived, so I have to adapt to this situation. I was initially looking to full clear or invade, but since this scenario happened, we can adapt it. So since Rengar did 3 camps, I did 3 camps, I decided, I actually didn't know at this point if I won 1v1, but I did know that I have a good chance of winning because Rengar is a spell-based champ, so I knew if he'd use spells on the camps, he would not be able to beat me in a 1v1. So I did know that Rail was coming, so I couldn't actually commit to the invade. So I was very patient here. I was actually thinking about leaving, but then seeing Syndra's wave stack and knowing we're gonna have push, since Rel wasted so much time trying to defend the jungle initially, I decided this is a good time to go in. As you can see, I stole the camp, and I'm ghosting at him, and I'm able to execute him. So I got the buff and the kill. Perfect start to the early game. Even though my bot lane got double killed, I found a way to invade even without my support and make time. I actually wanted to base here, and I kind of baited myself into this fight. And I end up actually killing the guy. It was like kind of lucky. I feel like I shouldn't have got that kill. Without killing him, little cheeky tax. You know how tax is these days. Inflation. So we get the kill. Unfortunately, I'm frenzied, so I just eat the tank and get a fast reset. So now I have a lot of items. As I've said in my itemization section, Hotbound Axe is my preferred go-to. And Pinkwood, and we move out on the map, checking to see if my camps are down, since I spent a lot of time bottling the little waste of a ward, but I really wanted to see if I could catch Rengar here. Was unable to catch Rengar, and now I'm getting invaded on because Jax has moved. I'm just going to skip past. I do my 3 camps. We see Rengar bot side. The most aggressive play for me here is honestly to try dive mid. So I just force something to happen because I just want to play it. So we get the free plate. I force the situation. I say come river because we should not be giving them river at all. And I'm able to control river. Unfortunately, my bot lane dies, even though they kind of knew Rengar's bot. But that's okay since we adapt. And so I'm clearing still. And I loop back mid because mid is still such a volatile situation. I still want to look mid, and I end up burning the flash with the ult, having a good try. So overall, great early game from me. I was able to like kind of turn a bad situation into a good situation just due to my ability to skirmish and obviously my decision making. Come on, guys, that was great decision making by me, being adaptive, non-committal to the invade, even though that was my intention. And yeah, this is going to work much better when your bot lane doesn't get tower dived and die 2v2 under tower before you hit level 3. Okay, so let's run through the options when you find it difficult to level 3 gank mid or bot or top or mid, and you can't really invade. So it's generally going to be a full clear or a gank top, but this is going to depend on how the top lane state is being played. In this game, I can see the Jace has a massive wave, so I don't want to gank right at this moment. But if he continues to mess with my Udyr, my champion is extremely good in long lanes, right? With my Ghost and W. So I recognize he's actually going to just keep going for this whole full wave. So I let Udyr clear a bit, but once we're ready to pull the trigger, you know, he's only lost like 3 creeps now by the time I'm here. A Ghost, W, there's no way this man is living. And we pick up the free kill. And as we play the early game out, I'm just going to look for vision and control and farm the rest of my sequence. Unfortunately, my mid laner dies, and if I skip ahead, my second base, I've got my Heartbound Axe, and I'm looking to clear my Raptors, but then something sus comes up, potentially bot, but I work towards my Raptors again. Now if we keep skipping forward, I know this is a very tight spot for my bot lane, so I decide to stay bot side for this scenario in case something does happen. But in the meantime, I'm just going to do dragon since this champion has insane sustain. And then I recognize Echo just walked straight past me. I decide to ghost down. And I'm a bit late, but I'm able to clean up at least one kill. And so I don't want to do dragon here. It's a bit risky and I don't want to base. So I decided to look mid. I end up catching him out. Unfortunately, my W re-aggroes. So this is something that I didn't know at the time. And I ended up just re-aggroing onto the minion. So we end up chasing him down and killing him. But that was a lot of time wasted because I didn't know that I would just re-aggro to the closest target there at the time. So we work on our red buff, we work on our golems, and see how I have insane sustain. I was half HP, and now I'm just full HP again. So you abusing this, I have 1600 gold, but I have more EXP than the enemy jungler just because of my sustain. So burn the flash on Blitzcrank. I'm able to essentially try to recover 2 losing lanes or 3 in this scenario, and avoiding certain invades here. This is where your E is gonna come in handy, guys. Unfortunately, we don't one-shot him, but you can see there that it was very close. Had I actually used my E before he walked into his W, I actually think we would have killed him. So there was a mechanical mistake by me, but this was a good example of an early game where my teammates were not doing well, and I'm still able to find ways to impact the map on Briar. Alright, so for this early game, this is going to be an early game where generally you don't have a lot of setup, or you feel you cannot gank the lanes. In this game, we do have a lot of setup bot side, but I recognize that my champion is not so good against range champs that have a lot of mobility and kiting, such as Bard with his Q and E and Bel'Veth with her E and Ghost. So I decided it wouldn't be worth burning summoners just to burn summoners, because they're still gonna have their abilities up the next time I come back. So I thought this was not going to be a good idea to path down, but I decided to path up for like the first time, I think, since I played this champ. And I'm still looking for opportunities, of course, but that is going to be my base game plan this game. And you can see in my clear, I go 2 points W when you're gonna full clear. So as soon as I recognize that nothing's gonna happen here, I go 2 points W, charge my E up first, so I can get more execute on my W here. And you can see my really healthy clear. And if I skip ahead, you end up seeing my clear is about 318, full HP, no pot needed. So this early game is pretty chill, nothing's happening. The jungler started offside, we take scuttles. And I'm just looking for any opportunity, but it's looking very unlikely that anything's going to happen at this point. But I am worried about my mid laner, so I end up actually choosing the wrong lane to look at, and I end up being late to this potential all-in. As you can see, I commit with my W. I don't feel like I need Ghost, so I just commit like my W to chase Cassiopeia down. End up getting execute. So really good start to my early game. Not so much for my team, but for myself individually. Great start. Full clear into a kill. Unfortunately, my bot lane died in the process, and my mid laner lost flash. So here, after 2 camps, I recognize that Malphite could have an opportunity. Notice my gank angle that I'm looking at. I'm not looking to go to the bush. I'm looking to just W over the wall, waiting for my mid laner CDs so it can get a lot more burst damage. And you can see I utilize Briar's mobility. And as you can see, if we go back, beautiful use of my E. For some reason, he didn't hit me with the E, so it didn't look like a montage. But essentially, if he hit me, I wouldn't be CC'd, and then I would E him. So, really good gank just to control the map and force the opponent to fight me, essentially. So, you can see all these trends in. I'm always looking for a fight, you know. There's never a time where I don't want to fight, but I'm never going to force the fight. So this game, like I said, I ended up full clearing, but after the full clear, I'm still looking to stay active. Anytime, anywhere. Like a true fighter I am. So end up taking the 2 camps off that great play I did mid, and I believe bot got solo killed, so in this time, I'm going to hit 6 at 6:30, which is insane, and end up looking for the Kaiser to complete my second clear. This time I just do my full burst combo. I don't worry about trying to DPS here. I just WQ straight away on him. Clear the wave, and that's going to be my second clear. Okay, now let's start looking at how we can effectively use Briar in the mid game once you've transitioned from essentially mainly being an assassin to a bruiser. So when it comes to the mid game, nowadays people like to group a lot, so this is not going to play in your favor at all. But in the mid game, it's not 40 minutes yet, so people are not ARAM 5v5ing yet. So in these scenarios, as you can see here, there's a lot of fight for vision and people are split often. So here I'm sort of split from my team. They overcommit on me and I'm able to survive using my Ghost, E, and Stridebreaker. So here you can see I get the 3-man fear. I'm able to use my E to survive a bit longer and create a lot of space for my team. If we go back here, I could have played this play much better had I altered straight after Kane died. I waited too long, and as you can see, Fiora went in and then went backwards instead of going forwards the whole time. Had I altered in earlier, they would have committed much harder, and we probably wouldn't have. No one probably would have died, so that was my mistake. But you can still see the idea of how you can use your alt and your E, your ghost, to weave in and out of the fight, which is how generally you're going to want to play fights as Blair. Moving on to the next situation we're covering. So after that play, they decide to full commit on Herald, and I decide that we don't need to fight them here, as I don't want to really fight as this champion 5v5, so I look for just the bot tower to trade, and I end up finding Katarina. And this is the scenarios where, as you can clearly see, Blair thrives a lot. So we end up trading Dragon, Herald, Dragon, 2 kills, 1 kill, 2 camps, and 1 dragon for that Herald, which is so much better than what they got. You can see in scenario 2, I'm starting to feel myself, you know. I was 0-3-5. I got my team ahead, but I wasn't necessarily fed myself. But I was looking for free picks. And you can see here, Anivia ends up being in front of me, unfortunately. Ended up getting an egg and hitting a 3-man E into the wall and ghosting away. And I decided to go back in because I didn't know my limits there. And unfortunately, I get run down by literally 5 of their members. But as you can see here, if I knew my limits here and I just E'd and ghosted away, I would actually live in this scenario, which is crazy to say because that's literally 1v3. So you can clearly see the strengths and weaknesses of Blair here. So moving on to the next mid-game scenario, we have an engage from the opposing team first, and they end up trading 1-for-1 here. And I end up doing the same mistake, so be careful of doing this, guys, is ulting in to the front line when, or the back line, honestly, when your carries are already hitting their front line. So here I'm late, and I sort of panic. I don't reassess the situation here and take a breather. Kaiser's already hitting my Cassante, so now all I have to do as Blair is threaten the chase down on Vayne if he ever tries to touch one of my teammates, or threaten the ult. Because I'm on an angle on the side, I can actually ult their backline pretty easily if I just be patient. But I end up just panicking and going in. I still make some time, but not nearly as effective as if I had just waited and been patient for their frontline to either die or their backline to help their frontline. So last night here, my teammates get one pick, and with Baron, and any objectives in general, your sustain with W is super effective and needs to be abused at all times. So you can see here I lost only a quarter of my health, and by the end I obviously healed up because of Baron, but you can see how much I'm healing off just objectives. So don't be afraid to start Baron and tank when you're playing Blair. Now, for the final scenario, I'm the one face checking here. I end up ulting to gap close. And I'm going full berserk right now, chasing them down. This is me without Ghost, by the way. It looks like I have Ghost on. And now I have Ghost on, chasing the Katarina down. WQ, Stride Breaker, do my full combo. Unfortunately, Vayne literally counters my champion, so my E doesn't counter her true damage. And I end up falling, but end up chasing down the whole team and creating a great scenario for my team. So you can see how it would be very difficult for me to play an assassin build this game, because none of what I would be able to do would be very effective. I would have to kind of really hide and try to hit my ults on the backline to really make an assassin build work, which isn't really reliant on your skill per se, because of the cast time and the slow projectile. It's very easy to dodge, and if you miss that ult as an assassin, then you're quite useless. So this build and playstyle is going to be much more reliable for your mid game. As you can see, I hit the long range ult and end up killing him from halfway across the map. Now let's look at a mid game where we're in a situation where we're quite far ahead, and let's figure out how to close out the game, because the first day I played Briar, I actually got ahead almost every single game and I wasn't able to close, whether that's due to my understanding of the kit, my itemization, and my overall playstyle when it comes to figuring out how to clean the game out. So in this game, we're really ahead. I'm looking for any opportunity for skirmishes, as you can see here, or picks. So the way I'm playing is going to be more catered towards isolating targets. Now in this scenario, I don't do that much damage to Malphite, but it's still worth looking to chunk him for my backline, so I do get him to like almost half, and forcing the Malphite to ult a bit later than he wanted. And so now they've used all their abilities, so I'm saying to fight this because they're all split up, and this is the perfect scenario where, unfortunately, the guy face checks me, but even if he didn't, I would be able to chase them down one by one separately if they did not stay literally grouped. But since they split up, this is the perfect scenario for Blair. I'm able to burn the Warwick ult, and they're all split up. Able to pick them off one by one. Perfect scenario for Blair. And you can see, since they fought bot, Cassio feels like he can hit the tower top, but he actually can't unless he dodges my ult right now. And you can see I have force, I protect the tower. I'm able to just beat his ass with Black Cleaver and Stridebreaker with no problems at all. Basically healed off her and pushed the next wave. And now again, they're down one member. So what does that mean? Now there's probably going to be a split fight, or they don't want to fight us right now. So this is a perfect time for me to force a skirmish again, because one of their members is dead. So you can see how the game is just snowballing out of control just due to my global ult and my ability to skirmish. Again, someone dies, so that means I can keep going because I have sustain and I'm already spiked. So again, we're looking for the kills, looking for the bite there. And now another 2 people are dead, and we can keep going again because someone has died and the other guy's trying to compensate. So they're going to try to push the side while we were fighting top, but I actually have a global ult, so I'm coming down here as well. So now Cassio is dead, and the cycle repeats itself. Where someone is dead, they start a fight again, and we kill them again. But this time I'm not able to be involved, so I end up hitting the mid tower, trying to look for the global ult again after I kill mid tower. I don't get it. So now the map is chill. But again, it's the same concept. We're still looking for skirmishes whenever we can. I decide, again, since Blair's sustain is so good, I start the force to Baron. I'm now in a very comfortable spot where I don't mind team fighting. So I start it, and I end up looking for picks since they're all split up again. And this ends up being not in my favor because actually I go in first. So unfortunately, this is probably not worth it, even though we got 2 kills. I end up dying and giving a shot down. But still good concept. And end up looking again for split targets whenever I can. Unfortunately, I missed my Stridebreaker there. But whenever you don't one-shot, you can see my ability to disengage with my E is really great. But you can see this force of the fight makes their team also overextend. So the Malphite starts overextending, the Warwick starts overextending because they see a fight going down in their topside jungle. But this chaos is what you're gonna thrive on. So I end up doing a psychotic ult here. These are the ults you don't want to do, where your team is running, they can't fight, and you decide you're just gonna shoot your ult for fun. You end up hitting the right target, but you're going in literally 1v3 with no backup. Alright, to summarize this guide, let's look at the conditions it takes to carry a game on Briar Jungle. So, the first point I'd like to make is creating as many favorable skirmishes in the early game as possible. As I've covered in the guide, early game is the most important part of snowballing when it comes to Briar, due to its insane skirmishing strength in the early game. And you want to be creating as much skirmishes as possible through ganks, invades, forcing an enemy jungler to counter gank, forcing the enemy jungler to come to a lane. Any way you can force a skirmish that's favorable for you, you should always look for. So, moving on, creating as many split fights as possible. What I mean by that is we don't want team fights, 5 vs 5. We want 1 vs 1, 2 vs 2s, 2 vs 2 vs 1s. and 3v2s. We never ever want the 4v4 or 5v5. Because of the nature of Briar's self-taunting, it's very hard to actually play full 5v5 team fights properly. So ideally, you want to create as many split fights as possible, whether that's on second herald, first herald, dragon, where top laners won't be involved, first dragon, or when someone's basing, the enemy team's basing, and you can start an objective and force a fight that way without them being a full 5. Things like this where you can odd number fights. You must create as much of them as possible if you want to carry. Now, grading extended duels. This goes along with the idea that Briar has the best DPS as a bruiser out of all the bruisers right now in the meta. I feel like maybe Darius could be better than him, Briar, but other than maybe Darius off the top of my head, I don't see anyone having more skirmishing power with the frenzy, with the bite. It's just too much DPS. So create as much extended duels as possible where you can heal with your W as much as you want because of the low cooldown when you get to level 9 and your ability to weave in and out of a fight. And that moves me to the next point, weaving in and out of team fights. So what do I mean by that? So you saw in some examples, in teamfight examples in mid game where you are forced to team fight, right? There are times where it gets to a point where you haven't snowballed the game enough and you just have to 5v5. And in these scenarios, you want to weave in and out of team fights, meaning you want to be able to use your abilities, back away, and come back with your abilities again. You never want to just auto lock and just rah the first target like a bot, because you're just going to get one shot, even if you're fed or tanky. So weaving in and out of fights means using your spells and then maybe looking to re-engage with your ult on their backline or their front line and fearing multiple people. Now, the main point of playing this champion, the reason why this champion's fun in the first place, is just to be as psychotic as possible. For you to actually learn the limits of this champion and be successful on Briar, you actually have to just int. Just try to fight as much as possible and see where it takes you, because if you don't know your limits, then all the above doesn't work. You need to understand how far you can push this champion, because just like a F1 car, it can be run by me, who's a bloody L plate, or a professional, and they're going to be completely different mentalities, because the professional is going to try to push the limits as much as possible and get the most out of the car. That's going to be same for Briar. You need to be able to push the limits as much as possible to get the most out of the car. Otherwise, it's just going to be a very average champion, and you're probably going to look really bad on it, just like how I would probably crash my car multiple times before I actually understand how to drive. So, to end, I'm going to shout out to all Sawyer, I think. He actually helped me a lot. Well, I just watched him and I learned a lot from his videos on Briar, and he's actually helped me understand a lot within 1 to 2 days about how to play the champion, as well as my own experience. I'll pat myself on the back for also grinding and figuring out how to play the champion. But other than that, thank you guys for watching. I will be pumping out more content, or maybe more content on Briar, because again, there's so much to master on this champion. And also, don't forget, I have my coaching platform coming out very soon. We're moving on from Patreon to my coaching platform. It will be in a website form and a Discord community. So stay tuned for that. Other than that, thank you guys for watching. Like and subscribe and comment.